All right, fourth grade friends. So you have your chapter 20 questions and your book ready to go. We're going to go over the chapter 20 homework. Then we're going to read chapter 21 through 23. So 3 chapters today. Okay? So we had a front and a back side for homework. What did you get for number 1? What does Dominic believe the thief was after? What does he believe? What does he believe, Zane? He believed that it was after tickets. Good. Yeah, this one was a short line, so if you wrote tickets or their tickets, I'm okay with that because it was a really small line. If you wrote a full answer, bravo for you. That was an amazing use of your small space. Good. Number 2, who is Pascal? Who is Pascal? Nathan?
Pascal is a fisherman.
Is a fisherman. Good. You might have also said Pascal is a clam seller, or he is Father Tommaso's friend. I would accept any of those. Claire?
I did a dark-skinned boy and an old stained sailor.
Whoa, giving me a physical description of what he looks like. That is above and beyond. I'm looking for, at the minimum, that he's a friend of Father Tommaso's. He's a clam seller or a fisherman. Lily? Okay. Number 3, what is polpo? Polpo, it was an Italian word meaning, Alicia? Octopus, or multiple of them would be octopi. Good. Squid is different. This one said octopus, yep. All right, number 4. Why do you think it was so upsetting that the thief had stolen the shoes? Remember, the boys were so upset and so let down. Why do you think they were so upset, Rosie?
I think the boys were so upset. I think it was so upsetting that the thief stole their shoes because now they have nothing to wear in America, and those shoes were their papa's shoes.
And they were their papa's shoes. Yeah, so going to America, now they have nothing for their feet, and they were their dad. So 2 kind of reasons why they're so upset. You got another one, Amelia?
Yeah. I believe it was upsetting because they are orphans. You don't have nice things. No shoes don't have the nice things that they had.
And the shoes, yeah, you're right, were one of the nicer things that they had, and now they don't have them. Oh, another great reason. You guys are crushing this. All right, number 5. Describe Pascal's method for catching and killing an octopus. So this one should have quite a few steps because you have to catch it and then get it to die. How did he catch it first? Eden?
He used the mirror that makes the octopus get, run. And it was so fascinated by that, the first run, and then grab it, like the heart.
And then you bite the heart out. Good. So he drops the mirror down on the line, and the octopus goes, "Ooh, who's that handsome fellow over there? Who's that pretty lady?" And then they go, "Ha!" And then they bite the heart out of the octopus. It is a little devastating. You're right. Well, they're probably in the same spot every time. Like, so they probably cut it open, yeah. Or just trial and error, and they tried to eat it whole, and then they were like, ugh, this part doesn't taste very good. Maybe we should get rid of that. All right, number 6. Based on his symptoms, what do you think is wrong with Salvatore, I should say. What do you think is wrong with Salvatore? Zach, what do you think's wrong? Yes, but what's wrong with him? We know he's sick. You're getting closer. We know he swallowed cherry pits. So what do you think is wrong with him? Why is he feeling sick? What about that specifically? Thomas?
The reason he is sick is because the cherry pits are going into his stomach, and since they're not bite-sized, and they're really hard, it's hard to digest.
Yeah, they're going through, he ate them, and they're going through his digestion system, but pits of fruit aren't digestible. So what are they doing to his insides?
Hurting.
They're hurting him, okay? Good. All right. Number 7. What does Pascal usually sell for more than his fish? He said he usually sells something for more. Levi? The relics, good. That's what he said. I usually sell these for more. His relics. You might have specifically said, like number 8 is asking, what were those relics? What were they? Nathan?
Saint Sebastian.
Saint Sebastian's. Whoa, getting super specific. I love it. Saint Sebastian's fingernails. I also would have accepted fingernails. That would be good. But if you give me the saint.
I said fingernails and Sebastian.
Okay. All right. So then going off of those relics still, what powers are they supposed to have? Remember, Pascal says they have certain powers. You remember, Christian?
The powers for the relics, they can heal you.
They can heal you. What part do they specifically heal? Do you remember? They heal a sour stomach. Good. Monica, you want to add a little?
Or
Nosebleeds. Isaac? Well, I can't hear you. Sorry. Sorry. Can you help me out, Monica?
A blow to the head.
A blow to the head. So if you get hit in the head, they would help. Claire?
And poor eyesight.
And poor eyesight. Did we miss any of them? I think we got them all. Good. All right. What was the name of the ship the boys would be taking to America? What was the name? Brooke?
The New Amsterdam.
You're really close. New Amsterdam. New Amsterdam. Good. As Lizzie pointed out yesterday, that's also the name of a TV show that we know now. And the city. It's a lot of things. It's a very popular name. Number 11. What bad news does Pascal give the boys about Salvatore being sick? Remember, Salvatore says he's got to get better. Why does he have to get better, Bennett?
The bad news that Pascal gives boys about Salvatore is that he probably couldn't make the trip to America.
He couldn't make the trip to America. Why can't he make the trip? You're right.
No.
You're really close. He has a stomach ache, so why can't he make the trip? What would happen to Pascal? Or not to Pascal, sorry, to Salvatore.
You probably get it probably get even worse on the boat.
Is it even going to get that far?
At the place, they're probably not going to let him get to America.
And also,
Yeah,
I think that Salvatore is not going to Salvatore's going to die, and then Dominic's going to take his ticket.
Ooh, maybe. So remember, think through, what did Pascal specifically say would happen to Salvatore if he tries to board? Do you remember? Do you remember, Micah? They're not going to let him board because he's sick. Because what could he do with his sickness? They don't know. What might happen? Like if one person in our class gets sick and you don't stay home, what would happen? Maddie? What if a Christian was sick and came to school and is sitting here? What might happen? Rosie could get sick. What would happen on the ship then? Everybody would get sick and it would spread. So, all right. So we know Salvatore won't be able to board if he's sick, so he couldn't make the trip to America. Good. All right. On the back side, describe Signora Giasulo. What do you think, Lizzie?
Signora Giasulo is an old woman and wears a black dress and a lace shawl.
Black dress and a lace shawl. Good. Claire, you want to add a little?
Amazing cook and
Father Tommaso's sister. She's an amazing cook. Nathan?
An old woman with a black dress and a lace shawl.
Yup, a lot like Lizzie, is he? Yup. Brooke?
An old, kind woman that may be a nurse.
We want to know what they tell us. Camille, you got something to add? Who's caring for Salvatore? But I specifically want to know that she is Father Tommaso's sister. She's an old woman. Where's the shawl? Didn't it say she has red hair too?
No.
Oh, that was the husband, wasn't it? That was Signor Giasulo.
Yes.
That was Signor. Yep. All right. Good. Number 13. What meal do Dominic and the Candianos eat at Signora Giasulo's home? What meal, Zach? You are right. Do you remember the name of it? The name of the dish? Do you remember, Rosie?
I said they
Polpo
Or
or octopus. You are close. They do eat octopus. Remember, Antonio goes, yeah, this is always delicious. What does he say this is? Do you remember, Claire?
they eat zuppa di polpo, stewed octopus.
Zuppa di polpo, stewed octopus. If you said octopus, I would take that. Okay. But, and homemade bread. Oh, doesn't that sound awesome right now? Oh, bread in general just sounds good. All right, number 14. Describe how Salvatore's condition is progressing. Tell me if it's getting better or worse and why. So first, is it getting better or worse? And then why is it getting so much better or so much worse? Alasia? It's getting worse because the cherry pit is moving through his stomach. Ryan?
It's getting worse because it said that the next day, or like whenever they went to check on him, he felt so bad that he couldn't talk.
Right, he can't even talk now. So at the end of the chapter, he can't talk. What else is happening to Salvatore's kind of appearance too, though? We know it's getting worse. Christian? He's getting really pale, really white. What else is happening to him that we know? You could use your touch to tell this. Lily?
He's sweating.
He's sweating. Why is he sweating? Is it because it's so warm in Italy? No, why is he sweating? Lily?
I feel like some of it is because he's really nervous.
Maybe because he's really nervous. Monica? He has a fever, right? When you're sick, sometimes your body gets a fever. Why do we get fevers? Do you know? It's trying to fight it. So the fever is your body heating up to kind of kill those germs. So you get warm, so your body can fight off those germs. So he's pale, he's not talking, he has a fever, and it's moving through his stomach. Good. All right, number 15. What discovery does Dominic make while visiting Salvatore on his sick bed? What discovery, Amelia? Dominic saw that familiar key on Salvatore's neck. Something along the key, knowing that it looks a lot like his, right? It's familiar. Okay, if you wrote down exactly what it says, that's amazing. Lily, something different? You're just stretching. Brooke, something different?
He discovered a familiar little golden key at
Hold on. So that's very similar to what Amelia said, right? So he discovered that familiar key, that little key. Good. So now he found that key. And we talked a lot about this. This is kind of an inference. What do you think it means that he sees that familiar key? What do you think, Levi? That Dominic is Salvatore from the future? All right, you could think that. What else do you think it means that he has that key? Nathan? Great-great-grandfather. Why do you think it could be his great-great-grandfather? Okay. Maddie?
I think it's like Dominic and Salvatore are like somehow related.
They're somehow related. We might not know exactly how, but they're related. Very similar to Nathan's. Rosie?
I think Dominic and the kid Orphan are related because I remember yesterday, like you said, if you speak English when you're like writing down the names on like the paper and you do your best to spell the name, it's not gonna be like the exact same spell.
So maybe the names got changed when they do get to America. So maybe they really are related. Ooh, Thomas?
I think that the way Dominic got the key was Salvatore didn't make it to America or anything on his ship, so Dominic took it.
Ooh, so maybe Dominic's going to be the one to bring it to America for his family then. So maybe they're not even related. Maybe he just gets the key. All right, and the last part. Draw a picture of Salvatore at the end. I saw a lot of great pictures of a bed and Salvatore. I saw some people said like Salvatore going, or you had like a tongue sticking out, like, ugh, like he's feeling sick, or I think Zane had the blankets pulled up. You could see his hands pulled up over his neck, so you could tell he wasn't feeling good. Those are great. Something with him being too sick to really move, being in a bed. Okay? All right, questions on chapter 20. All right, then we are going to read chapter 21, 22, and 23. All right. So we last left off with our boys, and they noticed the familiar little gold key. Chapter 21. Nice job, fourth grade friends, and I love that you already are on it. My expectations during Read Aloud, you're following along in our book, not just enjoying the story, but following along and reading along too, okay? Chapter 21. Dominic was too stunned to talk. As he leaned forward to have a closer look, he saw the initials SC scratched on the key. Santa Claus! I'm just kidding. That was a joke. SC, you get it? Yeah, I was just being funny. Okay. Rosie thinks I'm funny, at least. They were scratched in just the same way as the ones on his own lucky key. Before he could say anything, the Signora hurried them out of the room, whispering that Salvatore needed his rest. Dominic and Antonio followed Francesco as he carried Violetta up the wooden ladder to the attic. That's where Signor Giasulo had laid down feather beds on the floor for them. All the while, Dominic stood clutching his bare neck, trying to make sense of what he had just seen. Francesco, he finally whispered, where did Salvatore get the key he's wearing around his neck? Francesco shrugged. He found that key last year in the churchyard. He keeps hoping that a pirate had buried treasure there, and that one day he will find the treasure chest that will open the key. The key will open. What about the initials? Initials? On the key, Dominic exclaimed. The initials SC. How did they get there? His voice had risen to a cry. Calm down. It's only an old key. Just tell me about the initials, Dominic pleaded. You scratched the initials on the key with Father Tommaso's pin, Antonio explained. The one he uses for the altar cloth. But don't tell Father. SC, Dominic whispered. Salvatore Candiano. Who else would it be? Francesco replied. That night, Dominic stayed awake long after the others had fallen asleep. He was thinking about his own father's name, Sal. He had never thought that it might be short for something. Salvatore say. And what would it mean if his father and Salvatore had the first name? There was so much that he didn't understand. How did he get Salvatore's key? How did he get here in the first place? Who was the old man on the phone in the museum? And now there was no time left to figure it all out before the other boys left for America. That was a short one. Good thing we got a few more to go. All right, let's keep going. Chapter 22. In the middle of the night, Dominic and Francesco were suddenly awakened by the sound of heavy footsteps on the ladder leading to the loft where they slept. Francesco, come, Father Tommaso whispered in the darkness as the light from his lamp lit his worried face. It's Salvatore. He's worse. They quickly awakened Antonio, and the three hurried down the ladder. They found Salvatore lying in the bedroom, groaning and doubled over with pain. Chalky white and drenched with sweat, he didn't even notice that they had entered the room. Signora Giasulo sat by his side, softly praying and fingering her rosary beads. Vittorio, take the little one out to the courtyard for a drink, Signora Giasulo whispered to her husband as she guided them all back into the hallway. Antonio began to protest that he wanted to stay, but the sadness in the old woman's eyes quieted him with one glance, and he hurried after Signora Giasulo. Why do you think Signora Giasulo wants Antonio to leave? Why do you think? Lizzie?
She doesn't want, she doesn't want Antonio to be really, really sad.
She doesn't, why do you think she doesn't, what would make him really, really sad? Christian?
His dad.
Antonio's not feeling, or Salvatore's not feeling too good, and he's probably going to die, right? He's gotten way worse, Father Tommaso just said. So Antonio has left the courtyard and he's with Signor Giasulo now. What is it, Signora? Francesco whispered. He'll be well enough to travel by morning, won't he? The old woman shook her head. But the saint's relics, they'll bring down the fever. Salvatore will get better. He has to get better today, insisted Francesco, clutching her arm. He's so very sick, she whispered. The fever is too high. Salvatore has said his prayers and received his last rites, Father Tommaso whispered, placing a hand on Francesco's shoulder. So as Catholics, we know that means something. What does that mean? He has said his prayers and received his last rites. Think back to what we've talked about, what we've learned about in religion. There were 7 of them. 7 things. What could this mean? He's received his last rites. Rosie?
It's like he's received his last sacrament.
Which is?
Anointing.
He's received his last rites, so he's received the anointing of the sick, remember, which is reserved for people who are going to
Die.
So he's received those last rites. Good. No, Father, Francesco cried. Don't say that. He's going to get well. He's got to. He's got to go to America so he can be a cowboy. His words trailed off into a sob. You must be strong, Francesco. For Antonio, urged Father Tommaso. Go to him now. He would want you beside him. Francesco followed Father Tommaso to the bed. Dominic stared from the doorway, unable to comprehend what he was hearing. How could Salvatore, who was so strong and alive, be dying from a simple stomach ache? Salvatore was too young to die. It wasn't possible. It wasn't fair. Can't you call an ambulance? Dominic whispered. Signora Giasulo looked puzzled, and Dominic realized that there were probably none around. What about a hospital? Isn't there a hospital we can take him to? The old woman sighed. The malaria has killed so many there. He's better off here. So back in the early 1900s, 1800 times when they had hospitals, you didn't want to go to the hospital because it wasn't as clean as like ours are. If you went to the hospital, you were pretty much going to die for sure because you'd either die of what you had or somebody else's disease would come to you then. So it's really bad. You don't want to go to a hospital, like the opposite of today. Francesco looked at Dominic, his dark eyes heavy with sadness. He's asking to see you, Francesco said. Dominic walked to Salvatore's bedside, where he found Salvatore lying, his eyes half closed. His face was flushed with fever, and his forehead beaded with sweat. Francesco gently laid a hand on his brother's cheek and whispered into his ear, Hey, cowboy, what are you doing just lying there? You should be up practicing your rope tricks. What do you think Francesco's trying to do?
Feel better.
Make him smile, make him feel a little better. He's trying to lighten the mood, yeah. Salvatore grimaced. Francesco, I'm afraid, he gasped. Dominic could see the pain in his eyes as he struggled to speak. Don't be afraid, Salvatore, Francesco said firmly. You will get better. You will. And we'll get you on the boat to America tomorrow. I promise. Salvatore closed his eyes and shook his head. That's not what I'm worried about. I'm afraid. I'm so afraid. Don't worry, Dominic tried to assure him. You're going to get well and be a cowboy in America. No, it's not that, Salvatore sighed. Come closer. Dominic leaned over the bed with his ear to Salvatore's pale lips. It's horses, Salvatore gasped. Horses? Yes, horses. I'm afraid of horses, Salvatore admitted in a weak whisper. We never could afford one. I've never been able to ride a full-size horse. How can I be a cowboy if I'm afraid of my horse?
That word sounds good because it's
Yeah.
said a lot.
I know. It's like he's about to die and he's like, I'm afraid of horses.
He's afraid of horses. He's kind of, he knows there's not much he can do, right? So he is kind of like
Rest of the time.
trying to make the best of it. Like, I can't be a cowboy. I'm afraid of horses.
And he's also trying to just be like, well, they're not going to know, like, where I am, so I don't know. Yeah,
All right. Let's keep going. And Salvatore groaned after saying that, but his eyes were fixed on Dominic. Well, Dominic hesitated, trying desperately to comfort his friend. I don't think you have to worry too much about that. No, Salvatore whispered. No, Dominic told him. Because I think once a cowboy meets his horse, it's like meeting your best friend. You recognize one another right away and just know what to do. I hope he recognizes me, Salvatore said, struggling to get the words out. The pain overtook him, and he groaned loudly. He will, Dominic assured him. You'll be a great cowboy with a great horse and your lucky buffalo nickel. Dominic reached into his pocket and pulled out his nickel. He felt sorry he hadn't given it to Salvatore sooner. Dominic pressed it into his palm now as a faint smile crept onto Salvatore's face and his eyes began to close. That's right. You get some rest now, Dominic whispered. If you're going to be a cowboy, you've got to get plenty of sleep. Francesco, Salvatore called to his brother. Do you hear? Francesco leaned over the bed. Hear? What do you hear? The bells, Salvatore whispered, his eyes closing. Don't you hear the bells? Salvatore gave out a final gasp. His eyes flashed open for a second and then quickly closed. Salvatore, Francesco cried. Don't! Please don't go! He lowered his face onto his brother's chest and began to sob. Dominic stood staring at the old buffalo nickel that had fallen from Salvatore's limp hand onto the faded feather bed. I'm gonna cry. Can you hear me, Salvatore? Open your eyes. Please, open your eyes, Francesco begged. Violetta nuzzled her way into his lap to comfort him. Oh, my sweet, Signora Giasulo whispered, placing her hand on Francesco's shoulder. He no longer hears. Dominic closed his eyes tight, fighting back the cry that was building up inside him. As he listened to Francesco's muffled sobs and the Signora's whispered prayers, he suddenly heard a melody coming out from the courtyard. Dominic recognized the tune at once. A tear rolled down his cheek as he heard Antonio's concertina begin to play. Home, home on the range.
Why do you pick the saddest books?
Oh, I promise I didn't pick these. These are picked by the school. But it is sad. I am crying.
Me and Lily are over here like...
Oh, goodness.
Oh, Antonio.
All right. Let's take a moment, fourth grade friends. Let's take a moment. Why do you think Antonio was playing that song? Remember, Salvatore loved that song. So Antonio, do you think he knows?
Yes.
He kind of has a feeling that his brother didn't make it. How do you think this death is going to affect the story now? How is this going to affect the rest of our story? Because we still got a good way to go. I mean, take a look.
Someone died.
Somebody has died, so how is it going to affect the story? What happens next? What do you think, Nathan?
Dominic might be able to go to America.
Why would Dominic be able to go now?
There's tickets, and since there were 4 people, since Dominic died,
So Salvatore died. Yeah. So we had 4 boys and 3 tickets. And now since Salvatore has died, now we have 3 tickets and 3 boys. Dominic could go now. Ooh, all right. Any other ideas how this might affect the rest of the story? Rosie?
I think in the story they're gonna just like bring them up a lot. Like that was Salvatore's favorite thing, and it's just gonna be like quiet.
Kind of quiet. Remember, like that heavy cloud? Maybe it'll just kind of be like that, where they bring up, they keep bringing up Salvatore here and there. Kind of sadness, just to remind you. Remember, was everyone's journey to America easy? No, a lot of them were filled with death and hardship. They were. Aiden? Salvatore, how do you think he's now a cowboy? What do you mean by that? Because he's up in heaven. Yeah, so he did kind of get his dream, right? He can be a cowboy up in heaven. That's a great bright side. Kateri?
He's also a really big character, so it'll be a lot.
Salvatore was one of our main characters. Kateri's right. Okay? So it's going to affect our story because we've lost a main character, right? We've lost one of those key parts. How do you think it's going to affect Dominic?
It's gonna be sad.
What do you think, Bennett?
I think it's gonna be really sad, and also, Salvatore, his dad, now those are, I mean, like, since he died, it's kind of confusing what those missiles mean
If it was Salvatore.
Salvatore's.
Yeah, because we were thinking, we know it's Salvatore's key with a C, but that doesn't make sense because he died. So he can't be Dominic's like great-great-grandfather, can he?
No.
Because he's died.
Wait.
Lizzie?
At the end, when he said, "Do you hear the bells?" I think he meant like, "Do you hear the bells of heaven?"
I agree with you at the end because remember he was asking about the bells and Francesco's like, I don't hear any bells. I think Lizzie's right. Maybe the bells of heaven, right? Kind of leading him home. Micah?
It might be like Francesco, who's his great grandfather or something. It's like one of the boys, but then he's in Salvatore's like great. Well, like somebody related.
Somebody related to them. So maybe one of the other brothers is actually Dominic's great-great-grandfather now. All right, we got one more chapter we got to read, friends. I know there's so many ideas. I know. All right.
If you have diabetes, do you have to go and take like the test?
They don't have the test yet. We're in only 1908, remember? All right, last chapter, friends, for today.
Last chapter for everyone.
Chapter 23. Signora Giasulo sat at Salvatore's bedside, chanting and wailing as was the custom in the city when someone died. Dominic was glad that he could leave the room. He had never seen anyone die before, except on TV. And when a person died on TV, the body didn't stay around. A hearse usually came and it was whisked away out of sight. But no one came for Salvatore. He was still lying on the bed. Dominic didn't like the wailing. It sounded too sad and scary. He wanted to get as far away from it as he could. He followed Francesco up to the loft where Antonio had hidden himself under a quilt. Father Tommaso climbed the wooden ladder after them and sank down on a rickety old chair. "You must not wait for the burial," he said. "The ship leaves at noon." "I don't want to go without..." Francesco's voice cracked or choked with a sob. "I know it's hard, Francesco," Father Tommaso said gently, "but you must think of yourself and your little brother. Maybe if Salvatore had been in America, there would have been a doctor and medicine to save him. In America, he wouldn't have had to fill his empty stomach with cherry pits. In America, you have a chance for a better life. Besides, the Padrone and his men will surely find you if you stay. With Salvatore gone, they may blame you for Tibero Randizzi's death. You must go. Do not worry. I will see that Salvatore is laid beside your mama and papa, back in Avoletto. I promise you this." "I want Salvatore," Antonio sobbed from under the quilt. "Salvatore is in heaven with mama and papa now," Francesco told him. "When can I go to heaven to be with them?" Antonio asked, poking his head out from under the blanket. "Ah, little one, such a question," Father Tommaso sighed, scooping up Antonio in the quilt in his big, strong arms and placing him on his lap. "It's not for us to say when our time on earth is through. This is not for us to decide. It is God who makes these decisions." "But what if God made a mistake?" Antonio whispered. "How do we know that he meant to take Salvatore?" "That is what faith is all about," Father Tommaso replied. "Everything happens for the best reasons that we know little about. Believing in the best is believing in God's goodness. Your mama had great faith." "But the best doesn't always happen," Dominic blurted out. Everyone turned to look at him, and he felt his cheeks burning with embarrassment at the sudden attention. Yes, this is true. Good things don't always happen, Father Tommaso nodded. He gently lay Antonio down. Then he walked over to the little crooked window on the far wall. He held back the frayed bit of curtain that hung over the frame. Dominic took a deep breath as the faint scent of lemons blew into the loft on the night's breeze. Look at those distant hills in the moonlight, the priest sighed. Our whole world, our life, is very much like that little patch of hillside you boys have lived on. There are beautiful flowers and olives and lemons, but there are bad things too. Weeds that choke the flowers, worms that infest the fruit, good and bad, side by side. Flowers blooming and fading, leaves twirling up with the sun, and fruit rotting on the vine. It goes on, changing all the time. One day, you will be able to look at everything and discover strength and goodness in the most difficult of changes. For it is the hardships we meet in life that make us strong, and it is our strength that makes us who we are. Oh, poor child. He is gone. He is gone. The woman's cries could be heard from below, causing Antonio to bury his head back under the quilt. Again, Dominic fought the tears that were coming to his eyes. Now you had better get some rest, whispered Father Tommaso. You will need all your strength for your trip. As Dominic lay down beside Antonio, Father Tommaso walked over to Francesco. The two of them stood by the moonlit window, where they whispered until the priest turned down the lantern and sent him to bed with the other boys. The sky is full tonight, Father Tommaso said. Dominic turned to look. Father Tommaso's back was to him. His bald head gleamed in the moonlight, and beyond the little crooked window frame, the twinkling of starlight spiraled through the velvety blackness of the night. Carrying the unlit lantern in his hand, Father Tommaso made his way down the ladder. As Dominic lay beside the boys in the darkness, he brought his arms across his chest and gently rocked himself back and forth, waiting for the hurt to go away. Dominic, Francesco whispered in the darkness, I promised I would return your kindness the day you took the whip for Antonio, and I meant it. I want you to take Salvatore's ticket and come with us to America. I know he would have wanted it this way. Will you come with us? Again, the words of the old man from the museum came back to him. Open your heart, little one, and all that you need will be yours. Dominic thought about how he had opened his heart and how much he had cared about Salvatore, only to find himself hurting now that he was gone. His worst fears had been realized. If he really cared about someone, he would surely lose him. But now that he had opened his heart, he didn't know how to close it. Dominic's eyes filled with tears as his answer came easily. Sorry, one second. Yes, he whispered, his voice choked by a sob. I'd like that a lot. The boys lay silently in the dark, and the only sound that broke the silence was a stifled cry from Francesco as he buried his face in Violetta's soft white fur. All right. So, whoa, what two really deep chapters, huh? Three. The first one wasn't as deep.
The third one was kind of. The second one was the.
Why do you think we have such deep and emotional books? Why? To teach. What do you think? Like, teach us what? In life, we lose people, right? The bad things happen. We got to learn how to move through that, right? We can't just be all rainbows and sunshines like Father Tommaso said. When you have the lemon trees and the olives and the beautiful flowers, the good things, what else do you have? Bad things like the weeds, right? Like the worms getting into the fruit. In our life, we have good and bad things. And it's important that we talk about both of them because it helps our heart too, okay? Rosie?
I think it was kind of hard for Dominic because I think it was like really hard for Dominic because he didn't really have like a certain like life that was like Francesco and Antonio. had like a certain secret of Salvatore.
Yeah, remember Salvatore and Dominic in the last chapter, chapter 20, really bonded, had that click. And now Dominic, he's close with Francesco and Antonio, right? But is he as friendly? He was closer with Salvatore, so that's going to be really hard for Dominic. Yeah. Maddie?
Does that mean Dominic's like real life name?
I don't know. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. Something's going to happen. We'll have to see what. Zach? I know. It is a good book, even though it's sad. Lizzie?
I forgot.
You forgot? Rosie?
I think it's a little suspicious that because the homie on the phone said both of my brothers died when they were very young, and then Antonio said when will I get to
Ooh.
So that's a little suspicious.
That is a little sus there. I don't know. We'll have to see. Christian?
I'm going off the roses because he said two of his brothers died. So
Maybe something's going to happen to Antonio. Do you want me to spoil it for you?
Yes.
Antonio makes it through. Antonio will be okay.
Who's gonna die?
I don't know. We all die eventually. Maddie?
You know, like, when was gonna get whipped? Because Dominic, like, got whipped.
Yep.
I think, like, Antonio would die. Because he said Dominic
Maybe. I don't think so. I think it just would have hurt really bad, though. But I get what you're thinking. Last one. Thomas?
If you said Antonio makes it through, he said, Francesco said that two of his brothers died.
Two of his brothers died. Yep. Does that mean Antonio might die someday?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody dies.
Everybody dies someday. Yep, he's just saying two of my brothers have died.
On the phone said they died from their
I promise Antonio makes it through, okay?
And if he
All right. He dies somehow. Doesn't mean it has to be in our book. No. All right.
Wait, Miss Rose, is this
This one is my favorite book that we read. All right. Let's take a look through our questions. You're not going to answer all of these questions in this section.
It's 21 through 25.
It's 21 through 25. So you want to look at the end and look for ones that say chapter 21,
It's 4 through 1.
chapter 22, and chapter 23. So you have the first page
Like a half.
and 1, 2, 3, 4 on the other side. Yep. So the whole front, and then 4 on the back side. If you want to circle the 4 on the back side so you know when to stop. And then we will read through the rest of it and do the rest of those questions for homework tomorrow night. So you have some work time. Thanks for joining my virtual learners.